I'm Brooke Foster, 32 years old. 2 years ago, my parents handed my brother a $100,000 check for a house while telling me I was the family failure who deserved nothing. I went completely no contact that night. Last month, Marcus drove past my office building in downtown Seattle and immediately called our father screaming. What happened next involved federal investigators, a boardroom coup, and the complete destruction of everything my family built. The golden child who got everything is now banned from holding any executive position for 5 years, and the failure daughter? Well, I'm writing this from my corner office overlooking their former empire. Before I share how a single audit report destroyed my brother's life, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Here's what really happened. The Foster family conference room hadn't changed in 20 years. Same mahogany table that cost more than most people's cars. Same oil paintings of my grandfather, the company founder. Same wall of accolades. Except now it was covered entirely with Marcus's achievements. Regional Sales Leader 2019, Top Revenue Generator 2020, Vice President of Sales, promoted at 33. My own CPA certification? That lived in a drawer somewhere in accounting storage. I'd worked in that building for 5 years after college, watching Marcus get fast-tracked through departments while I processed invoices in the basement. Brooke's good with numbers, my father would tell investors, the way you'd mention a calculator has batteries. But Marcus, he's got that Foster instinct for deals. The instinct I apparently lacked, despite graduating summa cum laude, while Marcus barely scraped through with a 2.8 GPA. 3 years ago, I made the mistake of pointing this out during a family dinner. My mother's response still echoes. Grades don't matter in the real world, sweetheart. Marcus has charisma. You have reliability. Reliability, like I was a Toyota Camry while Marcus was a Ferrari. He lived in a downtown penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows. I rented a one-bedroom in Northgate, 40 minutes from downtown with good traffic. His Mercedes-AMG GT sat in a reserved spot next to my father's Bentley. My 2014 Honda Civic required strategic parking to hide the dent I couldn't afford to fix. But here's what they never knew. I'd been keeping copies of every email, every memo, every financial document that crossed my desk. 3 years ago, I'd noticed something odd in the quarterly reports. Small discrepancies, wire transfers that didn't quite match up. I'd filed it away, thinking it was nothing. I was wrong. While Marcus was closing million-dollar deals over 3 martini lunches, I was teaching QuickBooks at the community college 3 nights a week to make my student loan payments, $1,847 a month for the next 12 years, the price of the education that made me reliable. My father knew about the second job. He'd seen me rushing out at 5 p.m. sharp, laptop bag heavy with grading to do later. If you applied yourself more during regular hours, he'd said, you wouldn't need the extra income. Marcus, meanwhile, had his loans paid off by the company as a signing bonus when Dad brought him in straight from graduation. Creative accounting, they called it. I called it what it was, nepotism with tax benefits. You could have had the same deal, my mother reminded me whenever I brought it up. But you chose to work at that nonprofit for 2 years. Marcus was smart enough to come straight to the family business, the nonprofit where I'd learned forensic accounting, investigating embezzlement cases. But sure, Marcus was the smart one. I had my CPA license, 3 professional certifications, and 7 years of spotless performance reviews. Marcus had a bachelor's degree in communications, and what my father called that Foster swagger. The swagger that let him expense $8,000 bar tabs as client development. The swagger that somehow justified a company car upgrade every 18 months. The swagger that made him indispensable while I remained invisible. 2 years before the $100,000 gift, I'd asked for a $5,000 loan to fix my car's transmission. My father's exact words, "We're not a bank, Brooke. Maybe this will teach you to maintain your assets better." Marcus bought his 3rd Rolex that same month, A performance bonus for landing the Henderson account. An account I'd sourced, researched, and prepared the pitch deck for, but I was just reliable. The dinner was at my parents' house in Bellevue, the one with the circular driveway and the fountain that never quite worked right. February 15th, 2023. I remember because it was the day after Valentine's Day, and my mother had made a point of asking if I was still single. "We have exciting news," my father announced over the Waterford crystal glasses filled with wine I knew cost more than my weekly groceries. Marcus was grinning like he'd already won something. He usually had. "We're giving Marcus the money for his house, $100,000. I set down my fork. The clink against the china sounded louder than it should have. "That's generous." "It's an investment in the family's future," my mother added quickly. "Marcus is ready to settle down, start a family, the right neighborhood, the right connections." "And what about me?" The silence stretched. My father cleared his throat. "Brooke, you're 32 and still renting. Still single. Still what, Dad?" "Still the failure." He didn't even hesitate. "Marcus generates $3 million in revenue annually. You process paperwork. This is about investing where we'll see returns." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "Don't take it personally, sis. Some of us are built for success. Others are built for support roles." "It's not about being fair," my mother added, touching my hand like I was a child who'd skinned her knee. "It's about being practical." I stood up, folded my napkin, placed it precisely next to my untouched plate. "You're right," I said. "It is about being practical." That night, I made 2 decisions that would destroy them. First, I would never speak to them again. Second, I would finally look into those wire transfers I'd noticed 3 years ago. Turns out, reliability has its advantages. The emails started the next morning, from Dad. "Your dramatic exit was unnecessary and frankly embarrassing. Your mother spent all night crying. I expect an apology by end of business today." From Marcus. A photo of him signing papers at the title company. "Thanks for not making this weird, sis." "Oh, wait." From Mom. "Sweetheart, you're being selfish. Marcus has always been sensitive about his success. Can't you just be happy for him?" I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I did what I did best. I worked with numbers. Specifically, the numbers in those wire transfers I'd flagged 3 years ago. $25,000 here, $50,000 there. Always just under the federal reporting requirements. Always to the same 3 accounts in Delaware. My phone rang. Dad. I let it ring. He called 6 times that day. Mom called 8. Marcus sent 12 texts, each one escalating from fake concern to open mockery. The last one, "Dad's right. You're acting like a failure and a child." That evening, I recorded the voicemail my mother left. "Brooke, this is ridiculous. You're embarrassing the family. Marcus told his colleagues about your behavior, and now everyone thinks we raised an ungrateful daughter. Is that what you want? To be known as the foster who couldn't handle other people's success?" I saved that voicemail, backed it up to 3 different clouds. Something told me I'd need it later. The wire transfers, meanwhile, painted an interesting picture. Every single one had been authorized by Richard Foster, CEO. Every single one had been initiated by Marcus Foster, VP of Sales. And every single one coincided with our competitors' sudden knowledge of our clients' strategies. But I was just the reliable one. The failure. What did I know about how business really worked? Quite a bit, actually. I typed the email at 11:47 p.m. on February 16, 2023. To the Foster family. Effective immediately, I am terminating all personal and professional relationships with you. Do not contact me. Do not visit me. Do not send others to speak with me. I am no longer your daughter, your sister, or your employee. Any further attempts at contact will be forwarded to my attorney. Brooke Foster. I CC'd David Kim, my friend from law school who'd offered to represent me pro bono. About time, he'd said when I called him that night. The resignation letter to the company was simpler. Effective immediately, I resign from Foster Enterprises. My files have been organized and transitioned. I didn't mention the copies I'd kept, the ones that showed a clear pattern of insider trading spanning 3 years. By morning, I'd blocked every phone number, every email address, every social media account. My mother tried reaching me through my hairdresser. My father sent a certified letter threatening to sue for corporate sabotage. Marcus posted on LinkedIn about toxic family members who can't handle others' success. 57 mutual connections liked his post. I incorporated my own firm that same week. Foster Forensic Accounting seemed too on the nose, so I went with Veritas Financial Auditing instead. My first office was a 200-square-foot space in a building that, ironically, had a perfect view of Foster Enterprises 6 blocks away. I could see my father's corner office from my desk. The one with the $30,000 Herman Miller setup and the putting green he used during conference calls. He couldn't see me, though. I was just another anonymous window in a building full of people trying to build something. The difference was, I had 3 years of evidence that would eventually bring their empire down. I just needed to wait for the right moment. 18 months of silence. No birthdays, no holidays, no just checking in texts. I built my business one client at a time, the way you build anything that lasts, slowly, carefully, with documentation for everything. My 5th client was Janet Morrison, CFO of Cascade Technologies. We'd met at a conference years ago when I was still invisible at Foster Enterprises. "I always wondered why you stayed there," she said over coffee. "Your audit work was the only thing I trusted from that company. I'm not there anymore. I heard Marcus has been bragging about driving out the dead weight, his words. She hired me that afternoon, not just for an audit, for a complete forensic review of their competitor analysis. We've been losing bids to Foster Enterprises with suspicious consistency," she explained, almost like they know our strategies before we present them. They did. I had the wire transfers to prove it, but I couldn't use them, not yet. Not without exposing myself to corporate theft charges. So I built my reputation instead. 6 clients became 12, 12 became 20. My little office expanded to a suite. I hired 2 junior auditors, both refugees from toxic corporate families who understood the value of quiet competence. David Kim joined as legal counsel, bringing 3 major clients with him. "Foster Enterprises tried to poach me last month," he mentioned casually. "Marcus offered double my current earnings." "What did you tell him?" "That I don't work for people who brag about destroying their own family members." The best part? My office view. Every morning I could see Foster Enterprises, watch the ant-like employees streaming in, and know that somewhere in that building sat 3 years of evidence that would eventually matter. Janet became more than a client. She became a mentor, the kind my father never was. "You know," she said one day, "the next Foster Enterprises board meeting is in 6 months. I happen to know 3 of the 5 independent directors. They're concerned about governance issues." "Interesting," I said. It was more than interesting. It was the beginning of the end. If you've ever been the family scapegoat, you'll understand what comes next. Sometimes the best revenge isn't emotional, it's mathematical, documented, and submitted to the proper federal authorities. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of underdogs winning with facts, not feelings. And remember, your worth was never determined by those who refused to see it. August 3rd, 2024. A Saturday. I was reviewing contracts when I heard the screech of tires outside my building. A white Mercedes AMG GT, license plate M Foster 1, sat idling in the loading zone. Marcus stood beside it, phone pressed to his ear, staring up at my office windows. My company name was on the building directory now. Veritas Financial Auditing, Suite 1200. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the pattern. Dad's office line. I didn't answer. The voicemail was predictable. Brooke, your brother just informed me that you're running a competing firm. This is a clear violation of your non-compete agreement. You have 24 hours to cease operations or face legal action. Except I'd never signed a non-compete. I'd checked before I resigned. Thoroughly. David Kim laughed when I played him the message. They're panicking. Cascade Technologies just announced they're dropping Foster Enterprises as a vendor. Your forensic audit must have found something. It had. The same pattern of insider trading, but now with a paper trail leading directly to Marcus's personal accounts. The next call came from Marcus himself, from a number I hadn't blocked yet. You think you're clever? Dad's calling an emergency board meeting. You're done. I don't work for Foster Enterprises, I replied calmly. Haven't for 18 months. You're competing against us. I'm auditing. There's a difference. Though I understand why you might not know that, given your communications degree. The silence lasted 5 seconds. Then, Dad's going to destroy you. He's welcome to try. I hung up. Then I called Janet Morrison. They know, I said. Good. The board meeting is next week. You'll be receiving an invitation to present your findings about those suspicious bid losses. The game was finally beginning. The cease and desist letter arrived via courier at 7 a.m. Monday. 30 pages of legal threats on Foster Enterprises letterhead, signed by Richardson, Blackwood and Associates, the firm that charged $1,200 an hour and kept a yacht named Billable Hours. David read it over coffee, occasionally chuckling. They're claiming you stole proprietary information, violated a non-existent non-compete, and, this is my favorite, engaged in tortious interference with family relations. Is that even real? Technically, yes. Practically, it's what desperate lawyers write when they have nothing else. The real threat came on page 27, buried in subsection 3.2.4. Demand for immediate appearance before the Foster Enterprises Board of Directors to address potential criminal theft of corporate intellectual property. They want me at the board meeting? They want to ambush you publicly, make you look like a disgruntled ex-employee. Classic intimidation. What they didn't know was that David had been busy too. His discovery requests had uncovered something beautiful. Marcus had been filing personal expenses as business costs. The $100,000 house money? It appeared on Foster Enterprises books as a strategic real estate investment. That's tax fraud, I said. That's just the beginning. David pulled up his laptop. Remember those Delaware accounts you flagged? They're all registered to MF Holdings, LLC. Want to guess what MF stands for? We had them. But more importantly, we had documentation. The formal board meeting invitation arrived that afternoon, hand-delivered by my father's assistant, the same one who'd been secretly forwarding me emails for the past 6 months after Marcus had gotten her written up for refusing to falsify his expense reports. Thursday, 2 p.m., she whispered, handing me the envelope. He's planning to humiliate you in front of everyone. But Janet Morrison requested you be allowed to present evidence. The independent directors agreed. I opened the envelope. Gold-embossed letterhead, the kind that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Tell them I'll be there. What we discovered next would send Marcus to federal prison. The Business Daily headline read, Foster Family Feud, Daughter's Competing Firm Accused of Corporate Theft. Marcus had leaked the story. Of course he had. My phone exploded with texts from clients. Is this true? Should we be concerned? Please call immediately. Harbor Municipal Credit Union pulled their contract that morning. We can't be associated with this kind of controversy, their CEO explained apologetically. You understand. I understood that my father's golf buddy sat on their board. By noon, 2 more clients had postponed their audits indefinitely. My junior auditors looked nervous. Are we going to be okay? Sarah asked, the one who'd escaped her own toxic family business. We'll be fine, I said with more confidence than I felt. The truth was, we were bleeding. 3 canceled contracts meant $180,000 in lost revenue. I could make payroll for maybe 2 more months. Janet Morrison called that afternoon. They're trying to force you out before the board meeting. Classic Richard Foster. Destroy the threat before it can speak. It's working. Is it? Because I just got an interesting email from someone inside Foster Enterprises. Want to know what your brother's been up to with that house money? My hand stilled on the keyboard. What do you mean? Check your secure inbox. And Brooke? Whatever you're planning for that board meeting, make it count. The email was from an anonymous address, but I recognized the writing style. My father's assistant again. Attached were wire transfer records showing the $100,000 moving through 3 different accounts before landing in a Cayman Islands investment fund. An investment fund that had purchased 50,000 shares of Cascade Technologies stock the day before Foster Enterprises mysteriously won their bid. The same day Marcus had attended a client dinner with Cascade's former VP of Sales. Insider trading. Clear, documented, federal crime-level insider trading. And my father's signature was on every authorization. Maybe you should consider settling, Janet said over lunch Wednesday. Take a payout, sign an NDA, move on. We sat in her corner office, the one with a view of Mount Rainier on clear days. Today wasn't clear. You sound like you're giving up on me. I'm being realistic. Your father has resources you don't. The media is turning against you. Even if you're right, especially if you're right, he'll destroy you before admitting fault. She was right. My bank account showed $23,000. Foster Enterprises had a war chest of millions. What would you do? I asked. Honestly, I'd probably take the money and run, start over somewhere else. Seattle's not the only city that needs good auditors. That night, David called with worse news. Richardson Blackwood filed an injunction. They're trying to freeze your business assets, claiming you're operating with stolen Foster Enterprises property. The evidence I collected while employed there? Exactly. It's bullshit, but it'll take weeks to fight, weeks you don't have. I sat in my empty office at 10 p.m., staring at the Foster Enterprises building. The executive floor was still lit, probably my father and his lawyers planning tomorrow's ambush. For a moment I considered Janet's advice. Take the settlement, sign the NDA, disappear. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't give up. Check your email. A friend who knows what they did to others before you. The email contained a single PDF. SEC Whistleblower Report, number 2024-8847, filed 0801, 2024, RE, Foster Enterprises Systematic Insider Trading. Someone else had filed a complaint. 3 days ago, before Marcus had even spotted my office. The whistleblower's identity was redacted, but their evidence was beautiful. 2 years of documented trades, all matching the pattern I'd found. I wasn't alone in this fight. And tomorrow, everyone would know it. I spent all night cross-referencing the SEC whistleblower report with my own evidence. The patterns were undeniable. Every time Foster Enterprises won a surprise bid, Marcus's personal accounts showed deposits exactly 3 days prior. Every time a competitor's deal fell through, there were wire transfers from those Delaware shells to accounts in the Cayman Islands. But the smoking gun was simpler than that. The $100,000 house money had never bought a house. County records showed Marcus still renting his penthouse. The down payment he'd supposedly made? That money had gone straight into MF Holdings LLC, then fractured into 5 separate trades, all based on inside information from companies Foster Enterprises was about to undercut. One trade alone had netted $400,000. And there, buried in the LLC's formation documents that David had subpoenaed, was the signature that mattered. Richard Foster, managing partner. My father wasn't just complicit, he was the architect. At 3 a.m., I found the final piece. An email from 3 years ago, before I'd resigned, that I'd saved without understanding its significance. My father to Marcus, CC'd to no one, sent from his personal account. Use the house funds as we discussed. Route through the usual channels. Remember, the appearance of propriety matters more than propriety itself. I'd been CC'd by accident. Marcus had tried to recall the email, but I'd already saved it to my personal drive, along with hundreds of other recalled messages over the years. The reliable one. The one who documented everything. David arrived at my office at 6 a.m. with coffee and a grin. The SEC just responded to my inquiry. There's an active investigation into Foster Enterprises. Has been for 6 months. 6 months? Your resignation triggered it. Apparently, several clients found it suspicious that their best auditor suddenly left and started asking questions. The board meeting was in 8 hours. I had everything I needed. The house money wasn't for a house at all, I said. David smiled. No, it was for something much more valuable. Evidence. David and I spent the morning organizing everything into a single devastating presentation. Page 1. The wire transfers. Page 2. The timeline of insider trades. Page 3. The email from my father explicitly directing the fraud. Page 4. The SEC whistleblower report. Page 5. The calculated damages, $2.3 million in illegal gains. We need this notarized, David said. Every page, make it legally bulletproof. His assistant arrived at noon with a notary public. We documented everything, created 5 certified copies, and sealed them in legal envelopes addressed to each board member. What if they refuse to let you present? The notary asked, clearly recognizing the Foster Enterprises letterhead. They won't, I said. 3 of the 5 independent directors specifically requested my presence. They can't refuse without violating their own fiduciary duties. David's phone rang. He listened, his expression shifting from neutral to shocked. That was the SEC. They're sending a representative to observe the board meeting. What? Apparently, someone tipped them that material evidence in their investigation would be presented today. They want to witness it firsthand. I knew who'd tipped them. The same person who'd been feeding me information, my father's assistant, Helen. She'd been documenting everything for 2 years, waiting for someone with the courage to use it. At 1:30 p.m., I put on my best suit, the one I'd bought with my first Veritas client payment. Not Tom Ford like my father preferred, but clean, professional, and paid for with honest money. David straightened his tie. Ready to destroy an empire? I'm not destroying anything, I said, collecting the sealed envelopes. I'm just presenting facts. The empire will destroy itself. The boardroom will become a courtroom, he said. I thought of every dismissive comment, every failure label, every dollar denied while Marcus got hundreds of thousands. Good. Janet Morrison met us in the Foster Enterprises lobby at 1:45 p.m. The independent directors are already inside, she said quietly. Thomas Chen, Sarah Blackstone, and Michael Torres. They've all reviewed my preliminary concerns about the bid irregularities. What's their position? Concerned, especially after the SEC contacted them this morning. My father hadn't expected that. He'd assumed this would be a family ambush, not a formal investigation. Helen appeared from behind the security desk, carrying a manila folder. Ms. Foster, these arrived for you. Her voice was professional, but her eyes said everything. Finally. Inside were 3 letters on SEC letterhead, each addressed to an independent director, confirming the active investigation into potential securities fraud at Foster Enterprises, case number 2024-8847. How did these? They were delivered an hour ago, Helen said. I made sure each director received a copy. Per protocol. Janet smiled. Your father's been in his office screaming at lawyers for the past 30 minutes. Marcus is pretending everything's fine, but he's sweating through his Tom Ford suit. We took the executive elevator, the one I'd never been allowed to use as an employee. The mahogany-paneled walls still smelled of the same expensive polish, but now they felt less intimidating, more like evidence of excess that would soon be Exhibit A. Thomas Chen stood outside the boardroom, a silver-haired man with sharp eyes. Ms. Foster, I understand you have information relevant to our fiduciary duties? I have documented evidence of systematic insider trading involving the misuse of company funds. He nodded slowly. The SEC agent is already inside. Agent Patricia Williams. She's very interested in what you have to say. Through the glass doors, I could see my father at the head of the table, Marcus to his right, both surrounded by lawyers. They looked confident. They wouldn't for long. David pulled me aside before we entered. Remember, you're not here as family. You're here as a forensic auditor presenting findings. Keep it clinical. Clinical, right. The moment you show emotion, they'll paint you as the bitter daughter. Don't give them that ammunition. Janet had one more surprise. I've calculated the damages to Cascade Technologies and our other affected partners. $2.3 million in direct losses, plus another $4 million in opportunity costs. $6.3 million total? Plus penalties. The SEC can impose fines up to 3 times the illegal gains. We're looking at nearly $20 million in potential liability. $20 million. Foster Enterprises' entire reserve fund. Agent Williams approached us in the hallway, a compact woman with the kind of neutral expression that probably terrified white-collar criminals. Ms. Foster, I understand you have evidence relevant to our investigation? I handed her one of the sealed envelopes. She opened it, scanned the first page, and her expression shifted minutely. The SEC equivalent of a gasp. This email from your father was sent to my brother 3 years ago. I was accidentally CC'd. I have the full headers showing authentication. And this wire transfer record? Shows the $100,000 supposedly for a house purchase being routed through shell companies into insider trading positions. Page 12 has the Cayman Islands account statements. She looked up. You realize what you're alleging? I'm not alleging anything. I'm presenting documented facts. What others conclude from those facts is their business. She almost smiled. Indeed. I'll be very interested to hear the board's response. The boardroom doors opened. My father's assistant, Helen, stood there with perfect posture. The board is ready for you now. I walked in carrying 200 pages of evidence that would end everything they'd built on lies. The reliable one, the failure, the one they'd dismissed, about to show them what real due diligence looked like. Sometimes the best revenge is simply enforcing the law. When family treats you as worthless while committing federal crimes, your documentation becomes your power. If you believe in justice through evidence rather than drama, hit subscribe. And remember, keeping records isn't paranoia when people are actually committing fraud around you. The boardroom hadn't changed. Same mahogany table I'd been excluded from for years. Same oil paintings of my grandfather, who'd built this company with actual integrity. Same crystal water decanters that cost more than most people's rent. But the dynamics had shifted. My father sat at the head, his Armani suit impeccable, his expression carved from stone. Marcus flanked him, fidgeting with his Mont Blanc pen, the one he'd gotten as a performance bonus the same week I'd been denied a cost of living raise. The independent directors sat opposite them, creating a clear divide. Agent Williams positioned herself at the far end, digital recorder visible on the table. This is highly irregular, my father began, a disgruntled former employee demanding board time. I invited her, Thomas Chen interrupted, as is my right as an independent director investigating potential fiduciary breaches. What fiduciary breaches? Marcus laughed, but it came out forced. This is just Brooke being jealous about the $100,000 you received for a house you never purchased? I kept my voice level, professional. Or about the systematic insider trading that money funded. The room went silent. Sarah Blackstone leaned forward. Those are serious allegations, Ms. Foster. They're not allegations. I placed the sealed envelopes before each director. They're documented facts. Page 1 shows the wire transfers. Page 12 shows the trading records. Page 23 shows my father's email explicitly directing the fraud. My father's lawyer, Richardson himself at $2,200 an hour, stood up. This is defamation. We'll sue. Please do, David said calmly. Discovery would be fascinating. Agent Williams spoke for the first time. Mr. Foster, Mr. Marcus Foster, you should know you're both under federal investigation. Anything you say here is being recorded. Marcus went pale. My father's jaw clenched. The boardroom had indeed become a courtroom. Let's discuss why my audit firm is a threat, shall we? I stood, clicking the remote for the boardroom's presentation screen. The first slide appeared, a simple timeline. 3 years ago, Foster Enterprises began winning bids with unusual accuracy, always undercutting competitors by exactly 3 to 5%, never more, never less. Statistically impossible unless we're better at business than you, Marcus interrupted, which we are. Or unless you had inside information. I clicked to the next slide. Wire transfers. Dozens of them. Every winning bid was preceded by transfers from Foster Enterprises accounts to Delaware shell companies, from there to the Cayman Islands, from there to personal trading accounts. My father's face remained stoic, but his knuckles were white against the table. These transfers, I continued, totaled $2.3 million over 3 years. They were authorized by Richard Foster, CEO. They were initiated by Marcus Foster, VP of Sales. That's company strategy, my father said coldly. Investment funds for market research. Market research? I clicked again. This is Marcus's personal bank statement. See these deposits? They match the market research payments exactly, down to the cent. Marcus stood up. You stole private banking information. No. These were subpoenaed by the SEC yesterday. Agent Williams can confirm. Williams nodded. We obtained warrants based on the whistleblower report filed 6 months ago. 6 months ago? My father's composure cracked. Who? Someone who was tired of watching you destroy people while enriching yourselves, I said. Someone who kept records of everything. Helen, sitting in the corner taking minutes, didn't even look up. But I saw her slight smile. Thomas Chen opened his envelope, reading aloud. Email from Richard Foster to Marcus Foster, dated January 15, 2022. Use the house funds, as we discussed, route through the usual channels. That's taken out of context. The context, I said, is that there was never a house. Was there, Marcus? His silence was admission enough. I clicked to the next slide. Marcus's rental agreement for his penthouse dated 6 months after receiving the $100,000. Still renting, I said simply. But let's see where that house money actually went. The next slide showed trading records. February 20th, 2023. 5 days after receiving the funds, MF Holdings LLC purchased 50,000 shares of Cascade Technologies at $12 per share. February 27th, Foster Enterprises mysteriously wins Cascade's bid. March 1st, Cascade stock drops to $8. MF Holdings shorts the stock, netting $400,000 profit. Janet Morrison stood up. That's insider trading. I was CFO of Cascade. We lost millions because of that leaked bid. You can't prove Marcus knew, Richardson started. Actually, I can. I clicked again. This is an email from Marcus to Connor Walsh, former VP of Sales at Cascade, the one who was fired for leaking information. Quote, thanks for the Thursday numbers. Payment confirmed as discussed. Marcus's face had gone from pale to gray. That's private correspondence. That Connor Walsh provided to the SEC in exchange for immunity, Agent Williams said. He's been cooperating for 3 months. My father stood, his voice thunderous. This is a witch hunt. My own daughter. Your own daughter who you called a failure? I stayed calm. Who you denied a $5,000 loan while giving Marcus $100,000 for fraud? It wasn't fraud, it was... He stopped, realized what he'd almost admitted. Michael Torres, the third independent director, spoke up. Mr. Foster, did you or did you not authorize these transfers knowing they would be used for insider trading? I want my lawyers. This is a board meeting, not a criminal trial, Torres continued. Though that may come later. Right now, we need to determine if you've breached your fiduciary duty to shareholders. Sarah Blackstone was reading ahead in the evidence packet. Dear God, there are dozens of these trades, all with inside information, all profitable, all criminal, Agent Williams added quietly. There's more, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. The room fell silent. 3 years ago, I noticed discrepancies in our quarterly reports. Small things, wire transfers that didn't match invoices, accounts that appeared and disappeared. I started keeping records. I clicked to a new slide. This is every suspicious transaction I documented while employed here. At the time, I thought it was just sloppy accounting. You had no right, my father started. I had every right. I was your senior auditor. It was literally my job. I paused. The job you paid me $67,000 a year to do, while Marcus made $340,000 for losing us clients. I brought in millions. You brought in criminal liability. I clicked again. This email chain shows you and Dad discussing how to hide the trades. Quote, make sure the SEC never connects us to MF Holdings. Use the house story if anyone asks. Thomas Chen looked directly at my father. Richard, I need to know right now. Is Foster Enterprises exposed to criminal prosecution? My father's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Finally, Richardson spoke. We decline to answer pending consultation with Criminal Defense Counsel. The independent directors exchanged looks. I move for an emergency vote, Chen said, to immediately suspend Richard Foster as CEO pending investigation. Seconded, Blackstone added. You can't. Marcus stood up. This is our company. Our grandfather. Your grandfather built this company on integrity, I said. You built a criminal enterprise on his foundation. Agent Williams stood. Mr. Foster, Mr. Marcus Foster, you'll need to come with me after this meeting. We have questions. The recording I played next ended everything. Before we vote, I said, there's one more piece of evidence. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the room's audio system. This is a recording from January 10, 2023, 5 days before the family dinner where I was called a failure. My father's voice filled the room. Marcus, the 100,000 is ready, but we need to be careful. The SEC is sniffing around. Marcus's response. Just say it's for a house. Brooke's too stupid to figure it out anyway. My father's laugh. She's good with numbers, but she doesn't understand real business. Never has. Marcus. Should we cut her in? My father. Why? She's just an employee, a replaceable one. You're the future of this company. The money goes through the Delaware accounts tomorrow. Make it look like a house purchase, then move it offshore. I've already got the insider at Cascade ready to talk. Marcus. And if someone finds out? My father. Who's going to find out? Helen? She's terrified of me. Brooke? She's too busy being reliable to be smart. The board? They trust me completely. The recording ended. The silence was deafening. That's... Richardson started, then stopped. There was no defense for that. That's conspiracy to commit securities fraud, Agent Williams said. Recorded before the crime was committed. This is what we call a smoking gun. Thomas Chen's face was granite. I call for an immediate vote. All in favor of removing Richard Foster as CEO, effective immediately? 5 hands raised. The independent directors were unanimous. All in favor of barring Marcus Foster from any executive position at Foster Enterprises? 5 hands again. My father's face had gone from red to white. You can't do this. I built this company. You built a crime scene, Sarah Blackstone said, and your daughter just exposed it all. That's your voice saying, make it look like a house purchase, isn't it, Dad? I asked quietly. He had no answer. The vote was swift and merciless. Motion to terminate Richard Foster as CEO, effective immediately. Thomas Chen didn't even look at my father. All in favor? 5 hands rose without hesitation. Motion to bar Marcus Foster from holding any executive position at Foster Enterprises for a minimum of 5 years. 5 hands again. Motion to demand immediate repayment of the misappropriated $100,000 plus 40% penalty interest, totaling $140,000, to be recovered from Marcus Foster's personal assets. This time, my father tried to object. You can't. We can and we are, Michael Torres interrupted. This money was obtained through fraudulent pretenses, it's embezzlement. Agent Williams stood. Mr. Foster, Mr. Marcus Foster, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit securities fraud, wire fraud, and insider trading. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane, Marcus shouted. She set us up. She's been planning this. For 2 years? I asked calmly. No, Marcus. You've been committing crimes for 3 years. I've been documenting them for 2. There's a difference. The SEC agents who'd been waiting outside entered. The handcuffs came out. Brooke, my father said, his voice broken. You're destroying your family. No, Dad. You destroyed our family when you chose crime over integrity. I'm just cleaning up the mess, with documentation. As they were led out, Helen stood from her corner. I'll need all board members to sign the emergency resolutions. Ms. Foster, there's also the matter of the whistleblower reward. Whistleblower reward? Agent Williams smiled slightly. The SEC awards up to 30% of recovered funds to whistleblowers. Based on the penalties we'll collect, you're looking at approximately $6 million. $6 million, more than my father ever thought I was worth. I don't want it, I said. Donate it to financial literacy programs. The board members stared. You're turning down $6 million? Chen asked. I already got what I wanted, justice, and my company is doing just fine. In the hallway, my mother stood waiting. Designer handbag clutched like armor, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. How could you? She whispered. Your own father, your own brother. How could they? I responded. Steal millions? Commit federal crimes? Call me a failure while using company funds for insider trading? It was just business. It was crime, Mom. And you knew. Don't pretend you didn't. She stiffened. I don't know what you mean. The family dinner. You said Marcus needed the money for the right connections. You knew it wasn't for a house. Her silence was confirmation. Marcus appeared, flanked by agents, hands cuffed in front. You're dead to me, he spat. Dead to this entire family. I've been dead to this family for 2 years, I said. Ever since you all decided I was worthless. The only difference now is that it's mutual. You destroyed us for money? I didn't destroy anything. I reported crimes. You destroyed yourselves by committing them. I paused. And it was never about money. It was about respect. The one thing you never gave me. You were supposed to be reliable, my mother said bitterly. The good daughter. The one who kept quiet and did her work. I am reliable, I said. Reliably honest. Which is why I'm not the one in handcuffs. David appeared at my elbow. The board wants to discuss something with you. I turned to leave. My mother grabbed my arm. Please, they're your family. You taught me family is business. I'm just collecting what's owed. I pulled free. Behind me I heard my father's voice. You'll regret this, Brooke. No, I said without turning. I won't. Within hours, the news broke. Foster Enterprises CEO arrested in insider trading scandal. The Business Daily ran it as their lead story. By market close, Foster Enterprises stock had dropped 30%. My phone exploded with calls, reporters, former colleagues, clients who'd left coming back. I ignored them all except one. Congratulations, Janet Morrison said. The board just voted. I'm interim CEO of Foster Enterprises. You? They need someone clean, someone with no connection to the crimes. Plus, I know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. What about the company? We'll survive. Barely. We're looking at $20 million in SEC fines, plus civil lawsuits from every company your father and Marcus cheated. But the core business is solid. Your grandfather built something real under all their crime. That evening, the SEC released their preliminary findings. 3 years of systematic insider trading, 47 separate incidents, $8.3 million in illegal gains. Your evidence made this case, Agent Williams told me in a follow-up call. Without your documentation, they might have gotten away with it. They almost did. But they didn't, because someone was paying attention, someone they dismissed as a failure. The irony wasn't lost on me. David forwarded me the legal filing. Look at page 47. I found it. The section on restitution. Foster Enterprises would pay $140,000 directly to me, the original $100,000 plus penalties. Marcus's personal assets would be liquidated to cover it. That's your money, David said. What they should have given you in the first place. It was never about the money. I know. But cash it anyway. Consider it documented proof that you were right all along. The next morning, 3 major audit firms called offering to buy Veritas Financial. The highest bid was $2.8 million. I turned them all down. I'd built something honest. Something mine. Something that couldn't be taken away by anyone who thought I was a failure. That was worth more than any offer. The settlement conference happened 2 weeks later. A sterile conference room in the federal building, all gray walls and fluorescent lights, no mahogany, no crystal decanters, just truth and consequences. My father looked older, his orange jumpsuit replacing Armani. Marcus sat beside him, the golden boy tarnished beyond recognition. The plea agreement, the federal prosecutor explained, includes full restitution, 5 years probation for Richard Foster, 3 years for Marcus Foster, and a lifetime ban from serving as officers in any public company. Additionally, Agent Williams added, the $140,000 owed to Ms. Brooke Foster must be paid within 30 days. My father's public defender, Richardson Blackwood, had dropped them immediately, nodded. My clients agree to all terms. Ms. Foster, the judge asked, do you have any objection to this plea agreement? No objection, Your Honor. Do you wish to make a statement? I stood. Only this. I spent 32 years being told I was a failure because I valued accuracy over ambition, truth over profit. It turns out those aren't failures. They're just inconvenient to people committing crimes. My father looked up then, met my eyes for the first time since the arrest. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For which part? I asked. Calling me a failure? Denying me equal treatment? Or just for getting caught? He had no answer. The wire transfer confirmation came through on my phone as we left the courthouse. $140,000 from Foster Enterprises Insurance Fund. I immediately transferred $40,000 to the financial literacy charity, keeping only what was originally denied me. Helen waited by my car. Thank you, she said simply, for finishing what I couldn't start alone. You were the whistleblower? She smiled. For 6 months, but I needed someone with standing to make it stick. You were the only one with both the evidence and the courage. We shook hands, 2 reliable women who'd brought down an empire built on lies. 6 months later, I stood in my new office. Corner suite, 15th floor, with a view of Elliott Bay instead of Foster Enterprises. Veritas Financial Auditing had grown to 12 employees, all refugees from toxic corporate families who understood that integrity mattered more than connections. The Foster Enterprises building was under new ownership. Janet had managed to save the company through brutal restructuring, but the Foster name was being removed from everything. My grandfather's legacy, erased by my father's crimes. Marcus worked as a junior analyst at a small firm in Tacoma. The golden boy who'd made $340,000 a year now made $55,000, less than I'd made as the failure. His LinkedIn still said former VP at Foster Enterprises, but everyone knew why former. My parents' Bellevue house had been sold to pay legal fees. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Renton now. My mother had tried calling me 47 times. I hadn't answered once. "You have a visitor," Sarah announced. It was Helen, now CFO of the restructured company under Janet's leadership. "I wanted you to know, we're implementing every audit recommendation you ever made, the ones your father ignored." "All of them?" "Every single one. Turns out the failure daughter knew more about protecting the company than the CEO. That afternoon, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line, "Thank you." It was from a woman named Catherine Walsh, Connor Walsh's wife. "Your courage in exposing Foster Enterprises saved my husband from prison. He made a terrible mistake, but you showed the world who the real criminals were. Our daughter will grow up knowing that standing up to power is possible." I printed that email, framed it, hung it next to my CPA certificate, the one my father had said was just paper. Sometimes paper is all you need, paper trails, paper evidence, paper that speaks louder than golden children ever could. "I don't need their love," I told David over coffee. "I needed their respect. Now I have neither, and I'm at peace with that." 2 years of silence taught me more than 30 years of family dinners ever did. Success isn't about being the golden child. It's about being the one who keeps receipts. Every dismissed email, every accidental CC, every suspicious wire transfer, they all matter when the FBI comes knocking. My father thought he was teaching me about business when he showed me that family meant nothing compared to profit. He was right, just not in the way he intended. Family means nothing when they're committing federal crimes. But evidence? Evidence means everything. Marcus called me a failure for choosing accuracy over ambition. Now he's the one scanning grocery receipts to make rent while I run a multi-million-dollar firm built on the foundation of brutal honesty. The $100,000 they gave him for a house that never existed? It bought him 5 years of federal supervision and a lifetime ban from the only thing he ever valued: power. The nothing they gave me? It bought me freedom from their toxic expectations and the clarity to see crimes they thought I was too reliable to notice. You can't choose your family, but you can choose your distance from them. You can choose documentation over denial. You can choose federal whistleblower protections over family loyalty that was never returned. To everyone who's been called the family failure, the disappointment, the one who just doesn't understand business, start keeping records. Your attention to detail isn't a weakness, it's evidence. If this story resonated with you, please share your own experience with family financial favoritism in the comments below. Remember, your worth was never determined by those who refused to see it, but your documentation might determine theirs in federal court. Subscribe for more stories of professional vindication through proper documentation. And to those still trapped in toxic family dynamics, your feelings are valid, your boundaries are necessary, and your success will be entirely your own. Like this video if you believe in justice through paperwork, not drama.